Hi, and welcome to Econo-Mía, a new podcast by the Latino Economic Development Center. I'm Marjorie Nemes, LEDC's Interim Executive Director and CEO.
And I'm Monica Martinez, LEDC's Communications Manager.
For those who don't know, LEDC is a nonprofit focused on economic development and is headquartered in Washington, D.C., with offices in D.C., Maryland, Virginia, and Puerto Rico. We focus on building and preserving assets among low to moderate income Latinos and other underserved communities. In other words, we work to close the racial and ethnic wealth gap. We launched this podcast because we believe it's important to engage in the broader economic conversation. We also want to make sure Latino voices are being heard and that we are providing our clients a platform to share their stories and experiences. Furthermore, LEDC is a well-known leader in its field and region, and the only economic development organization focused on the Latino community. Here with us today is Nathaniel Ru. He's one of the 3 co-founders of Sweetgreen and serves as their Chief Brand Officer. He has been recognized as a key innovator in food and business and is a graduate of Georgetown University. Nathaniel and his co-founder started Sweetgreen in 2007, opening their first location in Georgetown in Washington, D.C. Sweetgreen is a mission-driven restaurant that serves healthy food at scale. Their vision is to be as accessible as traditional fast food, but far more transparent and honest. Today, Sweetgreen is one of the fastest-growing restaurant companies in the U.S., with 130 locations around the country. Welcome, Nathaniel, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. First and foremost, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. And I just have a lot of gratitude for LEDC because you guys believed in us from the beginning.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for making the time. And so we wanted to start with a little bit about your background. Given LEDC's focus on the Latino community and on racial and ethnic inequity, we wanted to start this discussion with who you are, how you identify. Some of our listeners might be confused as to why the founder of a large and growing corporation is being interviewed on one of our podcasts, but you and your founders were one of our clients. Even more intriguing for some of our listeners may be your ethnic background. We find that the mainstream understanding of the Latino community in the U.S. is that it's a homogeneous community, and your story demonstrates that that's not the case at all. So I don't know if you wouldn't mind talking about
Sure.
your and your parents' ethnic background, national origins.
Sure. So I grew up in Los Angeles, and I'm half Mexican, half Chinese. So my mom is Mexican, my father's Chinese. And I'm just very fortunate because I got to grow up in such diverse backgrounds. And I also grew up with parents that were first-generation immigrant entrepreneurs. And so I had a kind of a front row seat watching them build their business. And it was a really amazing kind of formidable growth experience for me as a young child, just to kind of see that from the ground up. And so I ended up going to high school in LA. I went to college at Georgetown in Washington, D.C. And I met two friends who are now my business partners 15 years later. And I met John, who was my business partner, in accounting class freshman year. I was sitting behind him, and he was wearing a Lakers t-shirt. He was also from LA. And I met Nick, my other business partner, through John, because they lived on the same floor freshman year. And the one thing that really bonded us together was that actually all of our parents were first-generation immigrant entrepreneurs. And we had this bond for food, but we also had this kind of underlying bond of this idea of entrepreneurship and really the permission to go do something that was a bit untraditional at the time, which was starting a restaurant. And so really, when I look back at my upbringing and my time with my family, is just really fortunate to have to come from such a diverse background.
Now, Nathaniel, before we talk about where Sweetgreen is today, let's rewind to 2007. Can you share with us how Sweetgreen was born?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I met my 2 business partners in college. And we saw an opportunity to create something that we wanted as students ourselves. We were actually just 3 college students simply looking for a healthier place to eat. And at the time when we started, we almost saw that there was 2 options. One that was, you had food that was slow, expensive, and fresh, or you had food that was kind of fast, cheap, and unhealthy. And we just saw an opportunity where you didn't have to sacrifice quality for convenience. And we found a tiny old burger shack, 560 square feet on M Street, just outside campus. It was across the street from our apartment. And we spent our senior year really writing a business plan for a restaurant that could serve healthy food. We had no experience in really restaurant design or culinary. We had no experience in building restaurants. We were extremely over budget, and when we started building that restaurant, we were 3 months delayed. So everything that could have gone wrong went wrong in that process. But what was amazing was that we had each other, and we had this vision of, if we could really just make this first restaurant work, we could prove that it was possible to almost like really reimagine what fast food can be. And that was the original idea, was how do we create a restaurant company that really was ingredient driven versus kind of chef driven? And how do we almost think about creating a brand around that? You know, when we look at the food companies in 2007, and we looked at the ones that had the best marketing or the best storytelling, they're actually the ones that were the most unhealthy. And so as kind of students in our quest to redefine fast food, we saw a massive opportunity just to take that playbook and really find ways to do that for real food. And so that's really been our mission. Our mission at Sweetgreen is, how do we connect more people to real food, but do it in a way that connects food to culture and connects to lifestyle.
So a year after opening your first location, you all decided to open a second location. What was the decision? What was that decision like, and the process? And it's my understanding that at this point you all came to LEDC, if I'm correct here.
So we opened our first location in Georgetown on M Street. It was very small, but it ended up doing well. And we decided that from the success of that restaurant, we were going to open a second one. And this one was going to be our flagship store in DuPont Circle. And it was right next to the Fresh Farm Farmers Market that happens every Sunday. And so it was going to kind of be our way to kind of show that we could grab produce from our parking lot where the farmers market was and really use it on our front lines and serve our customers. It was much bigger. It had seating inside, and we were really excited, but it ended up costing us more money. And at the time, you know, now like food technology, delivery apps, all these things are very sexy and cool. But at the time in 2008, restaurants were still, you know, there was still liability and very hard to get financing for. We went to all of the banks that we were using, and nobody would give us a loan. And it was really difficult to raise money, not to mention it was still the middle of the recession. So we were 3 college students, opened a restaurant, middle of the recession, and with a restaurant company. It's like the formula for everything that shouldn't be right when it comes to building a company. And so we decided to get really resourceful, and one of our bankers actually told us about the LEDC and knew about my background, and we met with the LEDC in 2008, I think it was, and you guys were the only person that gave us our first loan. I think it was for $50,000, and that $50,000 was really helpful in helping us like get to the finish line of that second restaurant. And the LEDC was honestly the first corporation that actually took a chance on giving us money outside of our investors. So we have a special place in our heart for you guys.
We have a special place in our hearts for you all as well.
Yeah. And it's really great to hear that our work has, you know, that level of impact. And so you started to touch on this, but what is some advice that you would give entrepreneurs who are struggling to find capital to start or expand their businesses? I don't know if in retrospect, or if you all have learned anything along the way that you might be able to share.
Yeah, so when we originally raised money for our first location, again, it was the middle of the recession, and it was very, very difficult to go find a lot of investors. And so what we did was we raised $300,000 for the first location in probably increments of like $5,000 and $10,000, and max $50,000 checks. So it was a lot of people. And I would say that it was almost like before crowdfunding became a term, right? We had to go out and we had to find all these people to help us open our first restaurant. But what was really amazing about that process is because we were forced to talk to so many people and ask for money, we had to really practice our script and practice how to talk about the company and get a lot of feedback and get a lot of no's and understand where we needed to really tweak how we told the story of Sweetgreen. And I think that process of just going out there and asking for money is kind of like the gauntlet of any startup company, and it's a really amazing way to learn. And so I guess my advice would be persistence is also a powerful tool that sometimes getting a lot of no's is important in the beginning to get that first yes. And once you get that first yes, is really understanding why that person is investing and really take notes from that story to apply it to your future conversations.
Now, it's been 14 years since you opened your first Sweetgreen. You are now at 130 locations. What has that process been like? And, at what point did you all decide you were going to go on and, dominate the world?
Great question. In a strange way, we actually still feel like it's the beginning. We've been doing it 15 years. The three of us are still friends. And we actually still share one office and sit at one table. And I think that there is a real aligned vision of thinking about Sweetgreen as a 100-year business. And that's what's really exciting to us is we don't pretend to have all the answers. I mean, we've made every single mistake you can when it comes to opening a business. But to us, it's more about the journey of it and kind of just constantly improving the experience, constantly improving the food that we serve, and how we can really just serve more people better food. And the Sweetgreen of, call it 10 years ago, is so much different than the Sweetgreen today, and it will be so much different 10 years from now. And I feel like it's just this mindset of how do we constantly learn forward and continue to just constantly improve what we're doing. And as Sweetgreen goes from 130 locations today to beyond, we really have to evolve the way we do things, think about food at scale a bit differently. But what always will remain true is just our mission and that big vision we have of really reimagining fast food.
What are some things that you have learned along the way that you wish you knew before you starting this journey?
I would say a lot of times growth happens personally or professionally in the places that are unknown. And I think for companies and businesses, it's kind of easier to take a very linear path, which is important at times, but being open to taking a nonlinear approach to things and seeing things from the opposite angle can help really step change certain moments of the company so that you can, one, differentiate yourself, and two, do something that's a bit more, call it explosive or interesting, than just staying on a linear path to growth. And it's different for every company, but sometimes it's investing ahead of the curve, sometimes it's experimenting more. But I think just for any entrepreneur, being comfortable in getting uncomfortable in the unknown is something I would say.
Noted. Now, what's really admirable, about Sweetgreen is you all have always prioritized limiting your environmental footprint. Do you believe that the practices you have implemented are relatively simple for other food-related businesses to adopt?
Yeah, it's a great question. At Sweetgreen, we try to integrate sustainability into all parts of our business model. So it doesn't just sit on the side as a separate corporate social responsibility. It's actually integrated into the business.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say first in terms of our menu, we're already very much more plant forward and plant based. We still serve chicken and things like that on the menu, but the majority of the things that we serve are vegetables. And just by virtue of that, we're kind of already 30% more less carbon intensive than the normal restaurant. And I would just encourage people to really think about the menus they're serving and take a look at their ingredients and making sure that there's a balance of things that people want to eat, but that also are earth friendly. Because I think that's the biggest thing, is creating a menu design for the future. And that's kind of how we've always thought about it. But from packaging to, call it, the way we design our restaurants, we're really intentional about just the way all of it comes together.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. LEDC is venturing into this space, so we're really curious about it and hoping to get other businesses thinking about it. But as part of your mission, part of your mission is to build healthier communities and also includes combating food insecurity. Tell us a bit about that and why it's such an important issue for you all, and what do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, our goal is again connecting people to real food, and at Sweetgreen we try to find ways that we can use our mission to create impact. And a lot of that, what we've been focused on is two areas. One is, call it, food education, and then food access. And education for us doesn't have to mean, call it, just academic. It can mean storytelling. It can mean getting people excited about kelp, which is a sustainable ingredient. And so we try to find ways with education to connect to that next generation in a more emotional way. We have a program at Sweetgreen called Sweetgreen in Schools, which is essentially a curriculum that we've created to help teach third and fourth graders the basics of nutrition, and getting kids to kind of think about eating healthy at a younger age. But at the same time, we've also partnered with people like Naomi Osaka recently, who's a change maker herself, and being able to work together on a much bigger platform to show that healthy food can be fast food at the same time. So education is kind of a big thing that is important to the brand as we scale, and again, isn't a side project. It's fully integrated into the company. And then on the food access piece, it's more, how do we serve more people this type of food, and not only by opening restaurants, but we've also worked with kind of like community partners in the places where we have restaurants. Recently, we did a project here in LA to help a friend of ours, Kelly at Hank's Mini Market, redesign her kind of family's liquor store into a place you could get healthy food. And again, just finding ways for us to leverage the resources that we have on the team and our mission to make a bigger impact.
Well, you guys are doing pretty incredible work, and we read about the partnership with Naomi Osaka, and just congratulations on everything.
Thank you.
I know you said that you feel like you're just starting off, but for a company that's just starting off, you all are pretty inspiring.
Thank you.
So we couldn't end this episode without asking you, what's one piece of advice you would give to an aspiring minority entrepreneur?
There's real power in anything that you do when you act like an owner. And I think with growing up, especially watching my parents and being from both the Mexican and Chinese culture, there's this real pride in entrepreneurship. And there's a real pride of ownership when you're able to almost act like the founder of any company that you work for. Whether you are the CEO, the founder, or you're a new employee, this idea of ownership and just taking accountability and getting excited about it has always been kind of a thread for us at Sweetgreen. Three of us have probably done every single job, from working the register to launching advertising campaigns. And I think that there's no that's the best way to really understand a company, is just by acting like an owner.
That's amazing advice for owners and employees. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Make sure you visit your local Sweetgreen and join their movement. Thank you, Nathaniel, for joining us. We wish you continued success, and please keep in touch. Until next time, everyone.
No, and thank you for having me. And I just want to say, LEDC gave Sweetgreen their first chance when it came to thinking about how we could get loans and financing in a different way. And we have just the most gratitude and respect for what you guys do every day. And thank you for taking a chance on us.